Okay. Hey, glad to have you. So, this is the MCCA class. Exercise number one. I'm ready to go. I got my coffee. I got caffeine. Let's do this. So, again, all these exercises, if they are trivial to you, watch the chat, and if one of your other coworkers, peers, shipmates, soldiers, whoever's in this group here, watch the chat and see if they're having problems. Maybe you can help them out, and and try to poke around and answer some other questions of your own in the environment, what you could find, and what you can think about. So let's get started. So here's our. So this was recorded on October 17th, 2022. This is the DoD MCCA class exercise number 1. So in the conference video, we already talked about zero trust. We talked about what zero trust is. Zero trust is you only trust those people on the network that you know are on the network and you're supposed to be communicating with. Everyone else gets zero access, zero permissions, and they get no ability to do anything, at least to you. So to think about that, you guys, the environment you're in, you already see a lot of zero trust. We're going to poke around in some environments that are completely opposite of zero trust, meaning they allow everybody to in. And we're going to poke around and see some of the problems that causes and how you can deal with those problems. So you should have a jump box access. You should have a username and password, right? Damn microphone. Okay, so yes, you should have a jump box, and if the jump box is not working, you should be able to do this on the internet. So, meaning get your phone, set it up as a hotspot, connect into it, and don't try to do this on your phone. I know a lot of these young people love to do stuff on their phone. It's not really possible. It is possible, but it's not a good learning experience. You really need somewhere where you have a keyboard, you have a big screen, maybe a pen and paper so you could take some notes, jot some things down, maybe another notepad open so you can cut and paste some things. Anyway, get your computer, get it on the internet, and you can go through these steps. I'm going to go through the steps, then I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to figure it out on your own. You can pause the video, and so you don't see the answers. So after I go through the questions, try to go through them. I'm not going to give you that many spoilers. Then we'll go through the answers after you have done some attempts. Any questions, put them in the chat. Again, if this is trivial to you, very easy, you know this stuff already, keep an eye on the chat and try to answer some questions of the other people. And so we can get through as much topics as possible. I hope you guys help each other, because I certainly can't help all of you with everything. I will try my best. So what we're going to do, get on your jump box, and we're going to connect to an IP address on the internet using SSH. So first question, what tool would you use to do that? So I want you to tell me in general what you would use, also what you were able to use on the jump box for your particular situation. So SSH is secure shell, by the way. So that's question number 1. So you are going to go ahead and connect to that. You're going to use your student number, and then the password. And the password is in the chat. Okay, so that's question number one. You're going to connect into that box, and then you're also going to tell us what tool you would use to do that. Okay. Number two, now that you've logged into that box, can you tell what version the operating system is? How would you go about figuring out what version of the operating system that is there that you connected into? Because you know nothing about this box, not at this point. So, is there any commands you can type into the shell there that might tell you something about what you just connected into? That's question number two. Question number three, what, if anything, do you have rights to on the file systems? So once you've logged in there, you should notice that you're in a shell, and that if you do some common Unix commands, you can see that you do see a file system, and you should be able to try to do some things like create a file, look at files. So go ahead and see if you can do that. See if you can create a file. If you don't know how to create a file, we'll go through that. And let's see what you can figure out. Number four, try checking out /var/log. That's a folder on the system. And so can you see any files there under var/log? And if you cannot see any files there, why not? Can you see the contents of the files? If you can't, why not? Question number five, try checking out var/log/MCCA/auth.log. See if you can see that file. And if you can see that file, see if you can see the contents of that file. And let's see. I think that's about it right now. I'm gonna pause here for a bit, and I'll be right back. Okay, hopefully you paused the video, went through that, made some progress. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I hope you did. Why did you have to see that weird painting? That's just an abstract painting that I thought you would enjoy seeing rather than staring at my face. So, so let's go through what we did and how far we got. Trying to not get the numbers in there. There we go, that's better. Okay, so connect to the IP address 64.227.2.1 using SSH. What tool you use to do that? Okay, so what I would use is putty. This is what I would normally use. Putty.exe. So I have putty here. Looks like this. You would simply copy the IP address there that you need to connect into. Now I'm just going to use a username and password. If it uses a certificate, to connect, you would end up putting that in here under, it's an auth. It's been a while since I've done that. But anyway, you can make it connect using a key instead of a password. Some servers will do that. Some servers require a certificate and a password. We're just going to require username and password. So this is what PuTTY looks like. You put the IP address in. The default is already set to SSH. It also does telnet, which is not secure, not encrypted. It also does serial if you have a little cable connected to your computer. So we're going to connect to that. So this little message here is coming up because I used to use PuTTY to connect to this system before, but I had to rebuild it recently from scratch pretty much, and now the keys are different, and PuTTY's just telling me that because it stores the key when you connect, and then it looks back at it later and makes sure it's the same. Well, it's not the same. It's telling me something's changed. So if you were to see this and you don't know what happened and your server didn't change, you might have a problem. Somebody might be changing something on you, or you may not be connecting to the system you think you're connecting to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, and there's a way to get rid of that, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to say yes. So I'm going to connect to student number 1, and with the password, and that works. So we're connected using PuTTY. So answer the question is, what tool would you use to use that? You could use PuTTY, but there's some other things you could use too. So you could use PowerShell. You could use, oh my gosh, you could use if you're using another Linux system, you would use SSH. So you would just literally type SSH student 1 at 64.227.2.151. So you would type that in a command prompt. You could also, that also works in PowerShell. So let's say I was in PowerShell and I wanted to connect to the box. I would just put SSH student 1 and then at is where it's connecting to. And look at that, it tries to connect. Okay, so those are a few ways you can connect. PuTTY, PowerShell, SSH, SSH, technically that's SSH.exe. On Unix it's just SSH. So PowerShell would be SSH.exe. And there's other things. There's other terminal emulators out there that some you have to pay for. These are all the free ones. Okay. So that answers question number 1. Question number 2. What if you have logged into the box? Can you tell what version of the operating system is? Well, I think I just noticed that it tells you a little bit here right when you log in, if you paid attention. It says welcome to Ubuntu right there. So that's, you know what you're in if you saw that flash by. If you didn't see that, how would you know? Well, I think the word Ubuntu is here too. But let's say you want to know what version of Ubuntu. So you would do a thing called uname, and then if you just hit uname, it tells you you're on Linux. Like uname-a. Uname-a tells you more about what version of Linux and operating system. And you're on x86 64-bit system. That's the kernel or some details. So that's the answer to question number 2. Via the banner and using the command uname dash a. Okay. Number 3. What, if anything, do you have rights to on this file system? Okay, so how did anybody take a look at that? So first thing I would have done is done pwd and seen that this is, I was put in a directory called home student 1. To me that looks like home directory. Usually you have rights to home directory. So how could you tell that you had rights to a home directory? Well, you could try to create a file. To create a file on Unix, the easiest way is just to type in the word touch poop, create a file called poop.txt. You don't have rights. Look at that. So you cannot create a file. So I couldn't, but you should have been able to. So what happened is I created this folder. It drops you into that folder, but when I created the account, I did not associate it and I did not give it rights. So you cannot create. I can't create files, but you should be able to create files. So what it should have looked like is something like, let's see, we could do this. Now this is actually bad security practice. You shouldn't. You should not connect to root. You shouldn't use root at all very often, and you should not connect as root on a normal day-to-day basis. So this is not only bad security, it's bad practice. So, but I'm doing it. I just rebuilt this box. That's my excuse. Okay, so let's go into home /student1. Okay. Let's do an ls. Now, one of the things I hate about some of these modern terminal emulators is they do colors. And not only do they colors on the command line, they do colors with the text editing, which comes in handy, but I don't like it. Makes things hard to read. I could barely see that student right there. So these are their permissions, the user permissions and the group permissions. So here's the user, here's the group. Unfortunately, only root has read-write permission, and everyone else only has read and execute. And student 1 is not in there. So let's give student 1 permission. So we're going to do a chmod let's give everyone rights to this account. Okay. And now I see read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. So now if we go back up here, you should be able to create an account. You should be able to create a file. Okay. So now if we do ls, you see a file called poop.txt. It's an empty file. When you do touch, it just creates a file with 0 bytes. But you could edit that file or do something. So let's quick thing about Linux. I'm going to go through some Unix commands here. Some of you know this stuff, some of you don't. If you know it, just hang with me. So I'm going to edit that file using vi or vim. So I'm going to edit it. So you're in the vi editor. So you can just type Okay, so I added a little text. You see this little insert here that tells you what mode you're in. If I hit escape, you see that insert goes away. Now if I type, nothing's happening. That's because I just hit D twice, and that deleted my file, my last line. So I have to write that again. So I'm going to hit escape again, and I'm going to type I, and my insert comes back. Now I'm going to retype what I just typed in. We at the MCCA love our classes. Okay, I see my inserts on. I'm still in edit mode, so I'm going to hit escape. The insert's going to go away. Now, how do I save the file? So I could hit I again, go back into insert, hit escape, get out of it. Or I could hit semicolon, and then you see the semicolon here. I'm going to type W, write the file. It says poop.txt is written. I'm going to hit Q. Now I'm going to do an LS. My history is not working as such a limited user. I'm used when you're the root user or normal, a lot of users, you have history. So if you just type the up arrow key, you could see what you had typed before. So this account is limited and it does not have the history. Okay, so now we see a file called poop.txt with 125 bytes. How could you see what's in that file? You would type cat. Cat, if you don't know what cat is, type man and then cat, like man cat versus a girl cat, and it will give you some information about what that is. Man cat tells you all the help file for cat. Cat is short for concatenate. So concatenate files and prints on standard output. So I'd like to read through that. Just if you get tired of it, just hit Q. So cat is a command that you would type to view a file. Then you type the file. So originally I type cat poop dot text because that's the file. So cat poop dot text is going to do what? It's going to list out the file contents. And the only file contents are those two lines. Okay, so you should have been able to do something like that, create a file. Could you create a file anywhere else in the system? You probably couldn't, because I did not put this group in any students, in any groups, and there's only a few places where there are 100% permissions for all users. So let's go back to our questions. What do you have rights to on the file system? You have your home directory rights, which is home. Sorry, I don't like typing on this lame keyboard. I usually use a different keyboard. Home student 1, and you did have rights there, right? You could write files, okay? And it did not seem like you had rights to anything else. Okay, answer's number 3. Okay, question number 4. Try checking out var log. Can you see any files there? Why not? Okay, so as your student account, if you go into var, and then go into log, and you type pwd, it's going to say var-log, that's where you're at. You can do ls, ls-l, it's going to show you all these files. Lots of important files here. So a couple that I use usually off the top of my head for system administration is auth.log and last log or message log. They're called different things on different systems, but you can see by the file size, last log has a bunch of stuff in it. This is pretty much the log of the system. various minor, major, and critical events are in there. And then the one we're going to go over is, you can see also is another two big files here, is auth.log, and that is the log for logging into the system or authorization into the system. Okay, so can you see these files? Well, you can see that the files are in there. Let's use cat again, and let's see if we can do a cat of auth.log. Oh no, permission denied. You can't. Let's do an ls-al auth.log has these permissions: read write to one person, and read, but then no read for everyone else. So yeah, you don't have any permission to there. So so the answer to that is yes, you can see the files, but cannot see the contents. Okay. Next, try checking out varlog MCCA auth.log. Okay, so if you watch the beginning of the video, there was a little screen here of me that showed me copying a file. So what I had copied was, I had done a copy of auth.log to varlog MCCA. So I created a new folder called MCCA. Actually, I think you can see it. Yeah, you see it here, MCCA. And you can see it looks like it has read permissions for everybody and read write for root. So if we go into MCCA folder and we type cat auth.log, oh look at that, we see this huge file. Okay, so this is the connection details of this system. And so we're going to go through this a little bit more in the classroom exercise. We're going to poke around and look at this file, do some exercises with it. And why do you care? Well, this is a open system. This IP address allows everyone in the universe to do a couple things. One is ping it. Second is SSH. Third is some other things. But so what happens is they have people out there on the internet that are constantly looking for these boxes, and then they have scripts running on machines that constantly connect. So this machine tried to connect as root, and it failed. Wrong password. Probably used some password. So people have written scripts, and they tried to connect as root, and they used password 1234, password test me, password blah blah blah, common passwords. So they'll have a list of 1,000 passwords, and if the script gets in, it writes something to the log, and then the person out there can tell that they can now get into the system as root. Sometimes it'll actually even do sorts of all automated tasks once it gets into a system. It'll do a bunch of other scripts that will check for things and permissions, and if any apps are there that it could take over. So, so these are all, my equivalent of this is they are walking up to a door, putting in a key that doesn't work, and trying to jam it left and right. They literally are attempting to break in. This isn't knocking on your door. Knocking on your door would be a ping. They're just pinging you. This is the equivalent of lock-picking your door. Trying to connect in and connect to your system. We're going to do a little bit of analysis of these files, who these people are, what countries they come from, what are some common usernames they do, and then we're going to go into how we would get away from zero trust and allowing all these people to connect to our machine. So, back to the question. Did you check out varlog MCCA log? You should have been able to. And could you tell us what it is? So it is an authentication log. It is an authentication log for logins, and also I think it's only for logins. Now there's a couple other logs. There's a system log, which is that message or messages will show events when people become root. There's other logins for that. There's other logs for that. I don't think they're in that log. So if I logged in here and then I wanted, as the student, and then I wanted to become super user by typing SU, and now that's the password for root, and I'm going to type it in, and now I'm root right there. That event of student elevating himself to root user should have been logged in a file. I believe it's in the message system log file, not in auth.log. So, and what did you notice? Hopefully you notice that there's a lot of entries, and they're from all sorts of IP addresses. So these are different IP addresses they came from. And there's, look, someone coming in from tests. So they thought somebody might have left a test account on it with some kind of password. So we're going to talk some more about that just in a minute. I'm going to pause the video and we'll be right back. Okay. We're back. We're on exercise 2. You're looking at the famous monument in the United States of the president. That's Abraham Lincoln, I believe. That's a man on his nose doing some maintenance on Abraham Lincoln's nose. Why do I show you that? So that you know that be patient. Not everything's built in a day. It'll take you time to learn all these things. Again, if you know these things, watch the chat and help out your shipmates, your soldiers. And with that, we're going to get into some questions in just a minute. Okay, we're back. Okay. So I got my my coffee cup with only a few drops of coffee left, so I'm not sure how I'm going to make it through this, but I'm going to try. Alright, let's get going. So, exercise number 2. Abraham Lincoln and the man on the nose. Again, patience is a virtue. Rome wasn't built in a day. It'll take you some time to learn this stuff. And if you already know this, please help the others on the team. Okay. Exercise number 2. So we connected to the host on the internet with our student account. We looked at a few things. We found out what kind of host it is, what it's running. We found out that we don't have a whole lot of permissions except our home directory. We can create some files. So what else would you, if you were a hacker, what would you do? What would you try to find out? You were the student here. You were able to connect to the Open Linux box, the friendly Open Linux box that allows almost everybody to connect because everyone is a friend in the world of Open Linux. So, but you're not a friend, you're an attacker and you want to see how unsecure this box is. So what would you do? You're able to connect in and you got a little home on the Linux box. You were given a little shell. Let's make it a little square in there. It's not a super powerful little shell, so it's a small little square, but you got in there. Now what I'd like to do is see what we can do from this box. Where can we go? Can we go back out to the internet? Meaning this box allowed you to connect in. Does this box have permissions to connect to the internet? Let's find out. What about connections to something else? What about connections to a different network that it may have connection to? Perhaps a big private network that's not supposed to be open at all. Perhaps it's a local area network that happens to have CUI, classified let's call it personally identifiable information database. So it has a database of a bunch of people that we could connect into and see what they're doing. Who knows? So let's try this out. So we got into the limited shell, or small little shell on the Open Linux box. We were able to poke around. Let's go to the next level and see what else we can do. So we're going to test our boundaries of this box. We kind of saw what we have in there. We're kind of limited. But now we're going to see what other connectivity we have from there to the internet, perhaps to another network. So let's do that. So the questions for that are this. So number 1, on this Linux machine, can you try to connect to something on the internet from this host? And then what does that tell you about this host? That's question number 1. So that's using your student account. Okay, so here's your student account. If you type who am I, hit enter, it says student, and then the number. You're on the student account. If you got disconnected, you'll have to reconnect. Okay? So from there, you're going to try to connect to something on the internet from this host. Okay? Now, question number 2. Can you see what other networks are available on this host? Perhaps can you connect to other networks' intranets from this host? So I'll give you a hint on that one. You will need to check out IP addressing on the host. So you might need to go and remember how you look up the IPs of the networks on a Linux machine. The reason you need that is because you're trying to figure out if there are routes or other networks connected to that machine. Okay, that's question number 2. A bonus question in the chat, I put another host name. See if you can connect to that using your student account. It is a different type of system than the one you're connected to. See what you could do about that one. I'm going to switch to our friend Abraham Lincoln here. And that's your cue to go ahead and pause the video, look at the questions, jump onto your shell here, and try to make some progress on those 2 questions. If you fly through this, please take a look at the chat every now and then and help other people with questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat. And then after the video, we could also go in more in depth into these questions and go through those. But while you're watching the video, please utilize the chat, and I'll also try to reply in the chat. Thank you. Okay, we're back. Yes, we are back. So, President George Bush is who you are looking at. And why I let you see President George Bush, perhaps to motivate you that you can be anything and do anything you'd like to do. But also for a bit of humor, this George Bush does speak. Let's hear what, and I can press a button that says motivating or funny. So I'm going to press the funny button and see what he has to say.
I have made good judgments in the past. I have made good judgments in the future.
I have made good judgments in the past, and I have made good judgments in the future. Very wise words from President Bush, Bush Jr., I believe that is. And so with that, I hope you have paused the video and tried to get through some of these questions, number 1 and number 2, and the bonus question. If you didn't, pause it again and stop right here so that you don't get the spoilers and see the answers to the questions. So let's go through the answers to the questions for exercise number 2. Thank you, George Bush, for that positively motivating speech there. Here we go. Again, the answers. Can you try to connect to something on the internet from this host? And for a refresher, let's go back, look at our picture of our Microsoft Paint picture, which I can't seem to get up on the screen right now. Come on. Wants to play. Alright. Go rewind the video and look at the picture. The picture shows you came in from the internet, you came into this host. Now we're trying to figure out what else you have access to. The biggest thing, so right now, number 1 is, can you try to connect to something else on the internet from this host? And what does it tell you? So, what I'm trying to explain is that if you were poking around on a machine and trying to make it more secure, you would hope that it didn't have access to the entire internet, both into the machine and out to the machine. So one of the ways I would check that, if I had limited account access, I'm not super user, I'm not root, I am simply the student in a small shell. One of the first things I would do is I would try to figure out if I could connect to a different port. So what I would do is I would get some, I'd also like to see if this machine has DNS working, and if it is a fully fledged, has a connection to a real DNS server. So I'm going to do that by typing dig, and we're going to type dig, let's just try something simple. Let's try just doing dig to bing.com. Okay, so this little command basically runs a DNS query, it comes back with the answer, and it puts you right back at the prompt. So it came back with an answer, and it was able, from this machine, I was able to resolve DNS and find out IP addresses. It's kind of useful. Now what I could do is I could see if I could from this machine, I could see if I could try to connect to one of those IPs, or Bing itself, bing.com, port 80. That's usually pretty common that they might leave port 80 open. Let's try a different port. Let's try email and see if port 25 is open. So to do that, I'm going to need an email server. The way I found an email servers, I'm going to do a dig to, dig type mx. So I think I do dig tmx, and I want Gmail, I want Yahoo's email servers. So I'm going to type yahoo.com. So this should get me the email, IP addresses and host names of Yahoo's email servers. MX stands for mail exchange. Those are mail exchange records. So when I just did this, I just did dig Bing. It just gives me the A records. A stands for address record. This should get me the MX records of Yahoo. So I'm going to hit enter. And now you see it says MX. It has a name next to it. And so this shows me that that host is somehow has access to a functioning DNS. And if I was a hacker, that would be a great thing, because then I could go connect to anybody else I wanted, pull down scripts, possibly use this as a botnet controlled server, or a server to go out and compromise other systems. Or I could just take over the box and perhaps run a web server and serve out content for free, because I'm not paying for it. It happens quite a bit. So anyway, we're kind of taking you in the role of the perpetrator and seeing what access you have on these machines. So back to the question and answer. Can you try to connect something from this host? Well, I did a DNS from this host just then. I didn't actually really connect, because I told the machine to do a DNS query. The machine did a DNS query, and that DNS could have been, and probably was not necessarily on the internet. It could have been a DNS resolver. Somehow basically relayed the information back from the internet to this machine. But the question was, can you connect to something from the internet? So that, to me, that means this machine, commanded by me, can I connect out to the internet? Is there no firewall? Nothing like that. So I'm going to try to do that now. I'm going to test the connectivity from this machine out to the internet by doing a telnet test to one of Yahoo's email servers. So, where did I get this from? This is this name right here. There are 3 different mail servers for Yahoo listed. I'm going to connect to one of them using telnet. Telnet is not mail though, but if I put port 25, port 25 is the TCP port that email uses. It should, if their email's working, and if this server has no firewall's out to the internet turned on, I might be able to connect. So this is one of the ways I would check outbound connectivity from this host. Oh, look at that. Connected to MTA AM0 yahoo.dns. Escape character is caret and a right bracket. I didn't type my email commands in fast enough and it disconnected me. So during that time I could have typed hello, blah blah blah, put the name of the email person. Usually the scripts and the programs do this. And I actually could have sent an email to somebody on Yahoo. They decided I wasn't typing fast enough, so I disconnected me. So that to me shows that they have port 25 and it has DNS. So could answer, can you try to connect to something on this internet from this host? And what does it tell you about this host? I did try to connect to something on this host. The answer was yes, I was able to connect to something on this host. What did this tell you about this host? Telling it on port 25 was open. I could try some other ports. How do I know exactly what ports and what connections are allowed? Is this little small user? I can't, except through experimentation and testing. But if you're a hacker, you would just try to get your scripts running, whatever you need to connect to. On this machine, it will probably work, and all of a sudden you're in business. And of course you're doing it all. If you just happen to stumble upon a username and password that works on this account, on the system, you'd be breaking and entering and utilizing someone else's system without their knowledge. Okay, so that's the answer to number one. Number two, can you see what other networks are available on this host? Perhaps you connect to other networks, intranets from this host. Okay, intranets versus extranet. You know what an intranet is, right? Intranet is usually not the intranet. So it is a local area connection, right? It is perhaps another network card or an interface that's plugged into that system that has other access. So I gave you a hint. I said look up the IP. You might want to check out the IP. So even though you're this little shell, can we figure out anything about the IP? Looks like we can. So I just typed command IP and then space address as the argument to figure out the IP address. So some of this I know and some of this I don't. So this I know because this is the IP I used to connect to it. Some other things I didn't know is that there's an IP6 address on this, and you could test that and see if you could connect in via IPv6. So this to me looks like a valid IP address. That 2604 is not there's a couple, if you see a couple numbers that mean it's an IP reserved for internal use. It escapes me. There's an IP for it's similar to a loopback, but it's not a loopback. It's an IP address that's on. Once you enable IPv6, you end up getting an IP address, and I think it may be even listed here. No, I don't think it's listed. On Windows, you'll see it quite easy. But anyway, look up IP addresses. Look up these first numbers, and you'll see what they stand. There are a few of those first numbers that are reserved for different parts of IPv6. And if you don't see one of those, but you just see a different number, maybe a real IPv6, and you could try to do a ping from this. You could try to ping that IPv6 address. You can cut and paste it from your own machine at home. See if it pings. So you didn't know that before. So that tells you that. The main thing I was looking for is if you notice this, which was, this is Ether 0. So this machine you don't know exactly what it is, if it's a VM or what, but it has some kind of virtualized or real set of Ethernet connections. That's two different ones. That's Ether 0 and Ether 1. Ether 1 actually has a different IP. And if you look up this IP, you'll see this is in the 10.116.0.2. Anything 10, there's 3 different IP ranges that are reserved for internal use. It's called RFC 1918, I believe. This is an RFC 1918 internal address. So when I see this, I think, oh look, it's got another Ethernet card, virtual or physical, connected to another network that I could possibly connect into. So back to the question, can you see what other networks are available on this host? I would say this network is possibly available on this host. 10.116.0.2 with a /20. So look up your subnetting if you don't remember what /20 is. I'm decent at subnetting, but I'm not great at it. But /20 means this first set of 8 bits, this first set of 8 bits, and 4 of these bits describe the network. The rest of the last 4 bits here and the last 8 bits are the address space. So 10/20 is a couple thousand IPs that are in that network. If it was /24, it would be all 3 of these would be the network, and only the last byte would be the host, and that would give you about 255 hosts, 254 to 253 hosts. But that's all I know. I just know there's another network connected to this machine. If I was a super awesome hacker, there's only a couple thousand machines. I could just start pinging every single one until I find one that perhaps responds. So that's me. Of course that's going to respond. But since I have write permission to my home directory, I could put a script there, and if I could set it to execute, I could run it, I could upload a script that could ping every single IP address in that network. Once I find one, it may be a different server in this data center, and that doesn't ping. Destination host unreachable. So I'm going to just hit Control-C, because that's just going to keep going and going. So hit the Control button, hit C, breaks out of that. Anyway, point being is we found another network connected to that host with possibly other hosts on it that could be exploited or utilized for a bad actor on the internet. There is on many machines there's an ARP table that shows you who has lost connected to a machine. On Windows you would just type ARP-A. Often on Unix you can. On this machine you can't, because ARP is not installed. I already tried it. But I did notice that out on the internet they talked about this little file that's, I guess, the common file on machines. So it's part of the internal processing of Linux, and it keeps track of some of the machines that the machine is last connected to. So you could type this, and you could see part of the ARP table, but it's really not a whole lot. I think if there was, I don't know how the article on the internet basically just said this is something you can use, that if ARP is not there, that will show you some information similar to ARP, but not ARP itself. ARP is not on this machine. So, back to the question, back to the answer. Can you see what other networks are available on this host? We did. We found that 10.116.0.2 with a /20 subnet is available on this host. Looks like it anyway. Can you connect to other networks from this host? We don't know. If you ran that ping script, perhaps you get lucky and find a machine that pinged, and then you could try to connect to it. So, yes, it looks like you may be able to connect to other machines on this local area network that is there. What else could you try to do if you were a hacker trying to figure out what's going on in this machine? You could do a thing called TCP dump. If the TCP dump is installed, and it is installed on most systems, and you can do a TCP dump. You could specify what network card or what IP addresses you want to look for. It's pretty simple to use. It puts it into a file, and you can read it. Now, often you'll actually see who's connecting and who's working. I'll try to show that in the after this video in our class. It's great for troubleshooting. If someone is trying to connect to your machine, but your machine is replying back to them and there's no answer coming back, with TCP dump you could tell if the answer is actually sent out your network card. So it's great to test if, like, is the firewall actually working, or is the problem the firewall, or is the problem not the firewall? Things of that nature. Okay, so that was 1 and 2. Hopefully you did great on those. To the bonus questions. How could you protect this host so just not anyone could connect to it? What were the exact steps you would take to do that? Okay, so the correct answer is you really can't do much as the student. So because you're in a limited shell, you really can't do a whole lot. So as a student, log in, you can't install a firewall. So some of you might have answered like that. And that would have been a correct answer. I hate when my little ribbon goes away. So, not a whole lot you could do there to lock down this machine. If you were this sudo, or if you could go to su, the super user, and type in root, and you had the permissions to change this machine, what could you do? So you could install a firewall, or activate the firewall. So as you did earlier in the question, you figured out what machine this is. Ubuntu Linux, you might have did a search for firewalls on Ubuntu, found that there's a firewall that comes with Ubuntu. It's called UFW. Pretty simple to install. You can install that firewall, and you could turn off SSH completely if you wanted, so no one could connect in, or you could only allow one network to connect in. That would be one of the answers for that bonus question. Once you install a firewall, you have to install firewall rules, and make sure you do not lock yourself out of the machine by completely closing all access. I'll try to do the firewall installation on this machine after in the discussion. There is another host I put in the chat. If you were able to connect to that, I will tell you some more about it after in the discussion, and you can tell me what you found out about it. With that, I will leave you with the mighty George Bush, and let's hear one other awesome saying from George Bush at this point in time. I think that would be a great thing to do. Let's hear it, George.
If we don't succeed, we run the risk of failure.
If we don't succeed, there is a risk. Let's do one more.
You can't take the high horse and then claim the low road.
You cannot take the high horse and claim the low road. I love that high horse thing. I don't know about the low road, but I like the high horse. Get up on the high horse. Okay. Let's go back to discussion, and we will, once we start a discussion, and again, help out your fellow classmates. Keep an eye on the chat, and I will also try to help you guys. And that is the end of this video. I will make another video for the next section of this class.